Hello. Hello, Chintu, you there? Hello, Chintu. Hello.
Hello?
Yeah, just want to confirm whether my screen is sharing your.
Yes,
Your.
visible.
Yeah, all right. Okay, let's wait for everyone to join.
Yes, please wait for
Yeah,
few.
we'll wait for 2 more minutes and we'll start.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for waiting.
Yeah.
You're able to sorry, you're able to see the PPTs, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, all right. Thank you. All right, let's start. So at least half the class present, or should we wait for another 2 more minutes? Hello? Hello?
Adheena, we can start the section because the video will be available to YouTube. No issues. We can start.
Yeah, all right, all right. Thank you. Then we will start it. Hello all. Today's session, as you have seen the slides, it's about business ethics. So in this module, we are going to look into the introduction into business ethics and some of the ethical theories and the concepts in ethics. Then on organizational ethics. There are the topics of corporate social responsibility, ethical leadership, corporate governance. We'll see if we have time for that to cover up. We will cover those two topics as well, those three topics as well, and we will see some of the terminologies as well. So, ethics. Ethics is a Greek. It is originated from a Greek word called ethikos, or from the Greek word called ethikos or ethos, which means interior dwelling place. So it's a branch of philosophy that deals with the values. So to define ethics, we are relying on the definition given by R. Viney Monte. Ethics is a discipline that deals with what is right and what is wrong. So ethics is a principle or standards or a deal or a branch of study which deals with what is right or what is wrong in a particular situation. Now, let's see what is business ethics. As the name suggests, it is coined with the two terms, business and ethics. So business is any economic activity that is done to generate profit, and ethics means the principles of what is right and what is wrong. So business ethics is the application of the principles and standards or obligation, moral codes and codicts of what is right and what is wrong under the business scenarios. So business ethics is the application of ethical standards and policies in the concept of a company or a corporation or a business condition. Now let's see what is the difference between ethics and morality. Ethics is a broad term. That ethics is more into understanding the regulations that determine what is right and what is wrong, whereas morality is the standards of what is right and what is wrong. Morality is what people do in that situation, whereas ethics is related more with what they ought to do in that particular situation. So morality is part of ethics, but it's not ethics. For example, an action that is ethically right may not be morally accepted. Or a situation where a business is morally correct in a particular situation, but is not ethically right for the full global environment. So we have seen what is ethics. Ethics is the discipline that deals with what is right and what is wrong, or what is good or what is bad, or what is the moral duty or obligation. Business ethics is the application of the principles or standards of ethics into the concept of business. We have seen the difference as well. So ethics are the regulations that examines the moral standards of an individual or society, whereas morality is the standard itself of the individual or a society regarding what is right and what is wrong. Now let's see the importance of ethics. We have seen ethics. We have seen business ethics. But for us, in our context, we have to look into what are the importance of business ethics in business. The aspects of ethics in business. So, an organization operating in a particular environment has to undertake and has to go on through a set of standards or principles which has to be ethically correct or not. They have to adhere to the ethical standards or conditions so as to ensure that the organization is working properly for the good of the society. So first importance is building trust and reputation. Ethical context or ethical standards, ethical principles in an organization ensures that the organization or company is able to maintain a proper reputation. An organization, for example, Tata, or for example, Patagonia. So if they are organizations that are famous for their ethical standards, they are reputed to be sustainable and ethical sourcing organizations. So those organizations which adhere to the principles of business ethics has a good brand name, which in turn helps in having customer loyalty, repetitive customers, and ensures that the bottom line is fixed or they have a profit in their organization. So business ethics ensures that the organizations maintain proper reputation and have and trust among their customers. Second importance of business ethics is for attracting and retaining talents. Organizations, they operate through operating, adhering or complying to the ethical standards ensures that their employees are working in a proper employment conditions. And those organizations, they attract talents, they retain their talents. Employees who adhere to the proper good working environment ensures that they don't they don't have more turnover. Thus, the organization which are adhering to the ethical standards ensures that they have less cost of recruitment. First important of business ethics is they maintain a proper reputation and brand image. Second is attracting and retaining talents. An organization which is not ethically correct, which doesn't follow their ethics, the employees won't stick to the organization and they will have to incur more cost on acquiring or retaining new employees. So Ethical principles, adhering or complying to ethical principles ensures that the organization retain its talents. They attract more and more promising and efficient talents. Third importance is legal and regulatory compliance. Organizations that adhere to the ethical context or ethical code of operations ensures that they don't get into bribery, they don't get into fraudulent activities, and they stay away from all these regulations, lawsuits, and thus they have they adhere to the legal or regulatory compliance, and thus they save themselves big time on the lawsuits or fines, and they don't have negative consequences. Ethics in business also helps in sustainable practices. Organizations that tend to follow CSR, they tend to follow sustainable practices, will attract more into their bottom line. For example, in the case of Ben and Jerry, that's an organization that promotes sustainability. Fair trade, so they are into fair trade. They are not much into fraudulent activities, and it helps them in their bottom line as well. Another importance of business ethics is avoid negative consequences. As we said in the earlier point, organizations that tend to avoid fraudulent activities, bribery, misrepresentation of information, and they don't have to face negative consequences of lawsuits. They save themselves from all the negative consequences. Here I have given an example of Enron scandal that has happened in America back in 2000, I think 2001. Yeah. So, organizations that tend to follow the ethical code of conduct, or they are much into ethical activities, they save themselves from the negative consequences. We will discuss the Enron scandal in the following sessions. So, another important factor of following business ethics is enhancing customer loyalty. As we see in the first point, adhering to ethical standards ensures that their customers stay loyal to the brand. They have a good brand image. Organizations that adhere ethical code of context, they ensures that their products and services are good to the customers. They are of best quality, so they attract more customers. They attract repeat customers, and they ensures that their business is growing. Thus, they have more customer loyalty and satisfaction. In the case of here, I have given the case of Tom Shoes. Well, they are famous for giving for their one for one policy. That is, they give one pair of shoes for every shoe purchases. So that is the ethical policy they are adopting, so that they ensures that the need of the people who doesn't afford us being satisfied. That's an ethical practice. That is a CSR practice, and it ensures that the customer loyalty and satisfaction is maintained. Another important factor of adhering to business ethics is prevention of corruption and fraud. Adhering to ethical standards, ethical frameworks, and guidelines set by the organization helps the organization to work in a fast pace without unethical practices. Unethical organizations that tend to follow unethical practices in will have to face legal consequences. They will cost them in financially as well as in the case of reputation of the organization. So preventing corruption and fraud practices also ensures that transparency accountability is maintained in the organization, and their ethical principles has been highlighted. Thus, they have big time on their bottom line. So we have seen what is ethics, what is business ethics, what are the importance of business ethics. And now we will see into the ethical issues in business. We will see a few of the ethical issues happened in business and around the world, and we'll discuss the few cases of ethical issues. So fraud and deceptive practices are ethical challenges or ethical issues. The first ethical challenges we are going to look into is fraud and deceptive practice. So we'll take the case of Enron scandal. Enron scandal happened in USA in 2001. They are a leading energy company, and what happened is their top executives, they mispresent their financial data. They tampered accounting. They provide fraudulent accounting reports, and their practices uh, were, f- were to mislead their investors, and thus they cost big time on their reputation. The Aron scandal, what happened is like they misrepresent their accounting reports, and thus it cost the investors billions of money once they find out this. And this has paved the way for the passing of Sarbanes-Oxley Act in America. So one ethical issue we have looked into is the fraudulent and deceptive practice. Fraudulent and deceptive practices is the mispresentation of financial data for financial gain. They sometimes organization they are facing debt may show their bottom line as positive. They will show they will falsely misinterpret their bottom line as a profit rather than a debt, and this will they will mislead their investors into buying of stocks, and this will cost investors big money. Second ethical issue we'll look into is discrimination and harassment. So we'll take the example of the Uber sexual harassment case of 2019. What happened is an organization should ensure that the working environment is harassment free or discrimination free. So discrimination and harassment can be based on gender, age, nation, etc. And in the case of Uber sexual harassment, what happens is that former engineer named Susan Fowler, she have raised, whistleblowered the issue of gender discrimination in the organization, and this has led into looking into the organization identifies that the organization was actually practicing gender discrimination, and the organization was providing toxic workplaces. And the workplace was actually toxic. And this has the Uber sexual harassment case leads to the proper implementation of anti-discriminatory policies in the organization. Another ethical issue, another challenge for ethical behavior in organization is environmental impact and sustainability. Let's take the case of BP Deepwater Horizon. So this is a company which were cutting down on their cost. And what happens because of their cutting down on cost and lack of safety measures, one of their rig exploded in 2010 and spills a large amount of oil to the Gulf of Mexico. And what happens is it has caused the environment much harm. The marine environment suffered, the community suffered, even the company suffered, as well as the environmental harm was much more higher. And once this Deepwater Horizons measures were evaluated, it was identified that due to their cost-cutting policies, these FT measures were not taken properly. And this has led to ensures that this has led to the implementation of policies that prioritize long-term sustainability over short-term goals of profit. And the sustainable challenge for organizations, labor practices, and human rights. We'll see the case of Nike sweatshops. What happens is back in 1990s, they set up their manufacturing units in underdeveloped or developing countries, and the factories operated were uh, exploiting people with exploiting child labor. The working condition provided for the employees were poor, and what happens is that there's a uh, global endo regarding this one. And what happens is the company has to make policies that is fair to the employees. They have to reframe their policies and structures so as to be more labor friendly. Another ethical challenge is conflict of interest. Conflict of interest means when the different stakeholders of the organization have different interests or competing interests. For example, in the case of Wells Fargo, what happens is the employees have a different interest than the shareholders or the owners of the company. Here, the employees were having high sales target, and they were forced to meet those target, and their incentives were based on the the sales targets. What happens is, because the employee's interest was to ensure that more sales happen, because they will get more incentive once the sales is high. And the employers were not looking deep into the system. However, what happened is the employees forges or opened a large number of unauthorized account, and that cost the organization millions. Once they find out the accounts were unauthorized, and it has affected their reputation, it has cost them in billions of money. So this is a example for conflict of interest, when the organization having conflict of interest between various stakeholders, so that the organization suffers. So ethics in organizations ensures that the company should look into matters so as to avoid conflict of interest. Now, the next issue or challenge in business is CSR. CSR actually is corporate social responsibility. That CSR means the organizations have a responsibility towards the environment. This is not these are statutory. However, this is a more voluntarily as well. So the organization has to give back to the society where it operates. So the ethical challenge in this case is like organization which are small or very operating niche environment with less which are small scale in business, they have a challenge to meet the CSR along with their profitability. When they try to balance out their profitability with the environment commitment, uh, they tend to lack this balance. For example, in the case of Nestle's water privatization case, here when the organization was more focused into getting their profit increased, or they were more focused into their bottom line. However, they lack in the corporate social responsibility aspect. They were accused of exploiting the water sources, especially from areas which suffers water scarcity. So these conditions, maintaining CSR, was a challenge for the organization when they are operating in an environment which is water scarce. However, they are also not looking into the aspects of CSR or giving back to the society. They were not considering the importance of water to the people of that locality. And this has cost them millions against the lawsuits, and they were more focused into, they were forced to uh, they were forced to change their framework, ethical framework so as to include CSR activities, so as to be inclusive of environmental friendly activities. So in this session, we have seen what is ethics. Ethics is the principle, study of what is right and what is wrong. So we have seen ethics, what is ethics in business or business ethics. Then we have seen the importance of ethics in business, and we have seen the few challenges of ethics faced in the business environment. Now, in the next session, we are going to look into the theories of ethics and some of the concepts of ethics. Theories of ethics. There are a large number of theories uh, that are being practiced in ethical field of study. However, in the context of business, we are looking into 5 major theories of ethics. The first theory is utilitarianism theory. This is a theory that is more focused on happiness or the aspects of goodness. So in utilitarianism theory, what it states that the actions or policies undertaken by the organization should be in such a way that it provides maximum happiness to the maximum number of people. So utilitarian theory focuses mostly on the outcome of an action. If an action provides maximum good to maximum number of people, then it is ethically right. So utilitarianism theory have two subparts, that is act utilitarianism and rule utilitarianism. In act utilitarianism, what it suggests that an action is ethically right when it provides maximum good to maximum number of people. In rule utilitarianism says an action is right when they follows all the rules and they provide and the rules adhering to the rules and providing the greatest good to greatest number of people. The second theory in ethics is deontological theory. This theory is completely opposite to utilitarianism theory. This is also called Kantian theory. So deontological theory says that an action is ethically right when it adheres to the rules and regulations. So this theory focuses more into the adherence of the rules, moral rules and standards than into the consequence. Even if the consequence is negative, the actions are adhering to the moral rules and standards, then the action is right. However, in utilitarianism theory, it is focused on the outcome. It suggests that an action is ethically right when it provides maximum good to maximum number of people. Deontological ethics says that an action is right when it adheres to the moral rules and guidelines, irrespective of the consequences. So the next theory is virtue ethics theory. Virtue ethics, as the name suggests, that focus more on the characteristics of the decision maker. So it is mostly focused on promoting moral development and ethical behavior. So an action is right when the characteristics of the decision maker matches with the long-term ethical results or long-term ethical consequences. And the next theory we are looking into is ethical relativism. So when we look into ethical relativism, we will also see what is ethical universalism. Ethical relativism, this is I'm really sorry, there was a power interruption here. Am I audible? Hello? Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
ma'am. Yes, yes,
I'm
it's
sorry.
audible.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the inconvenience.
Presentation.
Okay. So the screen is are you able to see the PPT or is it still me in the screen? Hello? Hello, please, someone confirm whether you're
Yeah,
able to
yeah,
see the
we
PPT.
can see the screen.
I'm sorry. All right. So we have seen utilitarianism theory. We have seen the theories of deontological ethics. The third theory we have looked into is the virtue ethics. Virtue ethics is more focused on the characteristics of the decision maker. So it should promote more, it is focused more into the promotion of moral development and long-term ethical behavior. The third theory is ethical relativism. So ethical relativism is context-based, context-dependent. What it says is an action is ethically correct if it is correct for that particular context or that particular person or a particular individual or particular culture. So in ethical relativism, it suggests that all actions are correct based on the context of the action. So, an action or a act is ethical if it is ethical for that particular context or individual. That doesn't mean an act is wrong in a which is undertaken in different contexts and by a different individual. So it is more inclusive of various cultures. Ethical relativism never says that an act is more, they are not focused much into the universal acceptance of a moral context. It is mostly into the particular situation or the context of that individual. So, however, in ethical universalism, it is more into the acceptance of universal moral standards. So, an act is ethical once it is adhered to the moral standards of the universe, where universe or means the complete where of the acceptance of whole world or acceptance of the moral standards of the universe. Whereas in ethical relativism, it is morally right if it is right in that particular situation. The fifth theory is stakeholder theory. Stakeholder theory refers to ensures that the actions undertaken should be in consideration with the interest of the stakeholders, interest of all the stakeholders. Any action which is morally right only if it protects the interest of the stakeholders rather than the situation. So the theory, let's see all the five theories of business ethics. First one is utilitarianism theory. Utilitarianism theory focuses mostly into the outcomes, whereas deontological theory focuses mostly into the adherence of rules and duties. Then virtue ethics focus on the character of the decision maker. Ethical relativism says mostly focused on the context, an action or an behavior or a activity or a decision is correct when it is correct to that particular context or individual undertaking the decision. Then ethical universalism says an action is ethically correct or morally right only if it is adhered to the universal moral standards. Stakeholder theory means all the actions undertaken should be in adherence or in consideration with the interest of all the stakeholders of that particular business. Now let's see the concept of ethical reasoning. Ethical reasoning is nothing but the act of reasoning in adherence to the ethical standards. So reasoning is thinking critically or systematically. So ethical reasoning is thinking systematically or critically in adherence with the ethical standards regarding what is right and what is wrong for a particular moral situation or a dilemma. So ethical reasoning means in the context of an organization, the organization faces an issue. For example, if an organization uh, is facing the is facing bankruptcy. So ethical reasoning suggests that we have to think critically of activities, or we have to think critically of decisions in regards with the ethical standard. So we have to undertake any action to face the bankruptcy only in consideration with the ethical aspects, what is right and what is wrong. We cannot just, for example, in this particular situation, when the organization is facing bankruptcy and they want to liquidate, they want to sell off and they want to be declared bankrupt. However, they have to look into the aspects of their stakeholders. They have to look into the aspects of their employees, employers, whether it is morally right or wrong to declare bankrupt for their employees as well. So if it is giving uh, a negative impact to any of the stakeholders because of the decision that need to be revisited. So ethical reasoning ensures that the reasoning is done based on the ethical standards, or it is done considering what is right and what is wrong in a particular moral dilemma or a situation. So ethical reasoning is nothing but the application of ethical theories or principles or standards while taking a decision for a personal or professional context. So we have seen some of the theories of ethics. Now we are seeing the concept of ethical reasoning. Let's see the key elements of ethical reasoning. So ethical reasoning is the application of theories of ethics into the decision-making process, considering what is right and what is wrong in a particular situation. The elements of ethical reasoning includes identification of ethical issue. So in a particular situation where the organization has to look into what is the ethical issue before taking up into a particular action, the organization has to revisit the issue first. They have to analyze what is the ethical issue, what are the implications of the actions undertaken, what ethical consequence, what are the ethical consequences of that issue. Then we have to gather the relevant facts. Gathering relevant facts means gathering information from the stakeholders, gathering information from the environment where it operates, so that ethical reasoning is being carried out. The third aspect is consideration of alternatives. An action, any action or any decision is not just a one way. There are many alternative course of actions for a decision. So the organizations, the people are taking ethical dilemma, or the people are facing ethical dilemma has to be revisited with all the alternatives. And once alternatives were identified, they have to apply the ethical theories and standards to the alternatives. The ethical theories and standards are the ethical what we have seen the ethical theories earlier, the utilitarianism theory, the principles of deontologism, virtue ethics, care ethics, justice for fair. Care ethics means it emphasizes that any decision should be undertaken looking into the wellness of the or well-being of the other people as well. So there should be an aspect of care, there should be an aspect of empathy. So then justice for fairness means there should be equality or fairness in any action undertaken. The key elements include identification of ethical issue. Once the issue or dilemma is identified, we have to gather relevant facts for ethical reasoning. Then we will have to consider the alternatives. We have to, once the alternatives were applied, we have to apply the ethical standards or principles or theory to those alternatives and then evaluate the consequences of each alternative. Once we list out the alternatives of an alternative course of action to deal with the dilemma, it should be evaluated based on the consequence. What are the consequences of each decision making? What are the short-term and long-term potential consequence to the stakeholders? What ethical, what impact has to be, what impact has to be looked into while taking the decisions. Then once the consequences were evaluated, then we take a decision. So the ethical reasoning ensures that the consequences were evaluated and the least damaging decision or the best alternative is being chosen. And once the best alternative is chosen, we revisit that alternative decision. We revisit that decision. That decision means once the decision is implied into the ethical dilemma, we'll have to revisit the decision to check whether it is right or wrong, whether it is producing the desired results, whether the consequences, the negative consequences uh, the negative consequences are minimum, whether it is being supportive to this issue we have been addressing. So we'll see the key elements of ethical. We have seen the key elements of ethical reasoning. The first element is identification of ethical issue. Once the ethical issue is identified, then gathering of data has been undertaken. Once the data is gathered for reasoning, the various alternatives were identified and it has been played with the ethical theories followed in the organization, and then the based on the different alternatives, the consequences has been evaluated and once the alternatives were evaluated based on its consequences, a proper decision has been undertaken, and once it is implemented, we'll revisit or we will recheck what the impacts of the decision is. That are the that are the main aspects of how the key principles of ethical reasoning. This is similar to the steps of ethical reasoning as well. So if you are familiar with the principles of ethical reasoning, you will be able to understand the steps as well. Same as the principles. Identification, the first element of ethical reasoning or principle of ethical reasoning is identification of ethical issue. The first step of ethical reasoning process is also defining the problem, that is identification of the ethical issue. Once a problem or the ethical issue is identified, identify the stakeholders, that is collection of collection of facts for the ethical reasoning. The collection is done from the stakeholder. The gathering of relevant facts is done from the stakeholders. Then we consider the alternatives of alternative course of actions. Here in the steps also, it's explore the alternatives. However, the steps may be interchanging. However, the third stage is like exploring the alternatives. Once it is explored, it has to be considered with the ethical theories of practices. That is the fourth step here as well. Application of ethical practices, our principles into the alternative course of actions. The fifth step is weigh the consequences. That is, we'll have to evaluate the consequences. What are the consequences of each alternative actions or each alternatives we have identified? Then the next step is make decisions. Make decisions means from the list of alternative course of action we have identified, we identified the best course of alternative is being decided to implement in that particular dilemma or situation so as to solve that situation. Then evaluate the decision, that is revisit or reflect on that particular decision. So we have seen the steps of ethical reasoning as well. Now, in the second session, what we have seen is the theories of the theories of ethics and the various concepts. The theories include utilitarianism theory, which is focused on the outcome, that is maximizing the happiness. That means an action is ethically right if it is providing maximum good to the maximum number of people. It has got two parts, two alternatives, that is act utilitarianism as well as rule utilitarianism. Act utilitarianism means an act is ethically right when it provides maximum good to maximum number of people. Rule utilitarianism is right when an action is right when it adheres to the rules or guidelines or principles of ethics and provide maximum good to the maximum number of people. Second theory is deontological theory. It is also called the Kantian theory. It is based on it focuses more into the duties and moral codes, moral rules and regulations. An action is right only when it adheres to the rules and guidelines of ethics and not based on the consequences. Then the third theory is virtue ethics. Virtue ethics is more focused into the characteristics of the decision maker. It is more into developing a long-term ethical behavior. And the fourth theory is ethical relativism. Ethical relativism means it is context-based. Act or action is ethically right when it is right based on that particular context. Ethical universalism means an act or action is right only when it is in in line with the moral standards. Then the fifth theory is stakeholder theory. That is an act or action is right only when it considers or it align with the interest of all the stakeholders. Then we have seen what is ethical reasoning. Ethical reasoning is nothing but applying the ethical theories and principles into the decision-making process. That is like systematic thinking, or critically thinking a particular situation based on what is right and what is wrong to deal with a dilemma. So the key elements of ethical reasoning is identification of ethical issue. The second element is gathering relevant facts, then considering the various alternatives, application of theories and practices of ethics into those alternatives, and evaluate the consequences of each of the alternative and take a decision which causes minimum negative consequences and maximum positive output, and then finally revisit or reflection on that decision. Similar to this, the steps of ethical reasoning includes define the problem, identify the stakeholder, that is collection of facts from the stakeholders, consider the various alternatives, consider the, then evaluate, apply the theories or principles to that particular alternative and weigh the consequence or evaluate the consequences, then make a proper decision and evaluate the decision, whether the decision taken is right or wrong, and whether it is giving the intended result or whether it is in line with the dilemma we are facing. The next concept is ethical relativism. As we have seen in the theory, ethical relativism means it is mostly into context based on, it is more into the moral, into a particular context. Ethical relativism says that what is morally right or wrong is depend on the particular context. The moral principles are not universally valid. For example, if an organization or if a company is undertaking a particular decision, it may be moral right for that particular context, or that particular dilemma. However, it may not be correct for another dilemma at another time or in another geographical area. So this is more inclusive. It suggests that there is no absolute or universal standards of morality. It's more focused into what is right or what is wrong, depends on that particular situation. It also says it says that what is considered morally right or wrong depends on the particular norms or values of the customer culture where it operates. Doesn't mean they have to be morally or universally accepted. So ethical relativism can be divided into cultural relativism as well as individual relativism, the two aspects. So cultural relativism means it is mostly into this one is not individual context. This is on the context of the culture. So an action is morally right or wrong, whether the moral codes and principles are suited for that particular culture or society. So no, this also suggests that no culture or no society is superior to another society. So all actions are right or wrong, and that but the actions which are right or wrong for a particular culture may not be right or wrong for another particular culture. However, this is morally right for the decisions. It is morally right for the culture where the context is applied. Cultural relativism also, according to cultural relativism, each culture's moral code of standard is right. They should be each culture's more code of conducts or more code of their moral code should be understood and respected as well. There is no superiority of one code of conduct or one particular culture's code of conduct over the other. So this is more inclusive of various aspects, various cultures, various contexts as well. So next is individual relativism. Individual relativism means the moral judgments are based on the individual preference. For example, the decisions or the actions undertaken are morally right for that particular person. But it may not be right for another person. what a person considered morally right may not be applicable or may not be morally right or acceptable for another person. However, both are inclusive. According to this philosophy, what it says that each person's actions are if they are morally right, it is ethically right as well. For example, a person who a person who believes that lying is wrong in all contexts. He is morally right in his own aspect, whereas a person who considers lying is wrong, however, in certain situations, in order to avoid negative consequences, lying is acceptable. He is right in his own context. However, it may not be acceptable by the first person. So, according to individual relativism, it says that both these point of view, both the individuals are morally right. Let's see the arguments in favor of ethical relativism. So what we have seen is ethical relativism. Ethical relativism means it's a philosophy that that says actions are morally right based on the context it's applicable. Ethical relativism has got two kinds. First is cultural relativism. Cultural relativism says moral codes and ethical principles are defined by each society. So the actions which are right or wrong in a particular society may not be right or wrong in another society. However, both are inclusive and they should be understood and respected. Individual relativism says it is more subjective to the individuals who undertake that decision, and all the judgments or preferences are right based on the context of that individual. This is also inclusive of the decisions of various individuals. So relativism is mostly inclusive and flexible. Now um, sorry, arguments in favor of ethical relativism. Ethical relativism is tolerant and understanding. According to ethical relativism, every action is right based on that particular context. So it is more tolerant to various actions undertaken. It's about moral imperialism. There is no superiority of one decision over the other, one culture's decision or one culture's norm over the others. It is mostly inclusive of every session of moral codes. Then the third is more flexible. They are more flexible and more adjustable based on those contexts. The arguments against ethical relativism is there is no universally acceptable standards. There is no it is moral contradictions are there. For example, the person who's morally right when he's saying that lying is wrong is right as well, whereas the person who is saying that lying is acceptable on particular situations is also right according to ethical relativism. So this is morally contradicted. This is contradicted. So ethical relativism is much of moral contradictions, though it is of inclusive of different aspects or different cultural cultural standards. So there is lack of universal moral standards. Ethical relativism is based on the context. Whether it is for a relativism or individual relativism, it is mostly into the context space rather than focusing on an universally acceptable code of conduct. Then cultural changes. For example, MNCs or in the code of context or the moral standards which are acceptable in one culture may not be acceptable in another culture. However, ethical relativism is saying that both the cultural code of context are correct. So this is a um, this may cause difficulty for MNCs which are operating in various countries. So So relying on ethical relativism may cause challenges for organizations under this case. Now, we won't be able to complete organization ethics if we start. We'll see this in the next session. We'll just go through what all the topics we have discussed now. So we have looked into what is ethics. Ethics is the principle of what discipline that is dealing with what is right and what is wrong. And business ethics is the application of principles or code of conducts in the aspect of a corporate or aspect of a business. That is application of ethical standards in business. Then we have seen the difference between ethics and morality. We have looked into the importance of business ethics. Business ethics helps in trust, building a reputation, building trust of the customers. Adhering to business ethics helps in attracting and retaining the employees. Adhering to ethical standards helps the organization in complying with the legal and regulatory standards. Ethical business ethics helps in sustainable business practices for organization and helps this in turn helps in avoiding the negative consequences they have to face. Then ethical business ethics or ethical business ensures that the customer loyalty and satisfaction is maintained. It helps in prevention of fraud or corruptive actions. Then we have seen the issues of ethics in business, fraud and deceptive practice. We have seen the case of Aaron's scandal case where the top executives uh, they altered the accounting reports so as to show a profit rather than their debt. In that case, due to the fraud and deceptive practice, the organization has suffered big time on their financial aspect, as well as the investors suffers millions of losses, and in the end the organization has to close down. The second challenge or ethical issue we have seen is discrimination and harassment. We have seen the case of Uber sexual harassment filed by Susan Power. Then the third ethical issue we have looked into is environmental impact and sustainability. We have looked into the BP Deepwater Horizons case where due to their cost-cutting strategies and lack of safety standards, the organization, there's an explosion of the rig happened and oil spilled into the Gulf of Mexico and has caused the environment and the marine life. Then labor practices and human rights. We have seen the Nike sweatshop case where the exploitative working environment and child labors were happening for the organization opened their manufacturing unit in developing countries where there is exploitation of child labor and other poor working conditions has been maintained so as to cause reputational damage to the organization. And the next issue is conflict of interest. We have seen the case of Wells Fargo, where the employees they have due to their high targets of sales, they opened large number of unauthorized accounts, which causes the company in huge millions. And due to the conflict of interest between employers and employees, ultimately the organization suffers. We've seen the aspects of corporate social responsibility in case of organizations we have seen the issues undertaken by Nestle due to the lack of corporate social responsibility, the exploitation of water in water scarcity areas by Nestle, which has forced the organization to renew its policies regarding CSR. Then Data Privacy and Protection Act, the case of Facebook, where they sell the user data, unauthorized user data to third party, which has opened the eyes into the issues of data privacy and ethical management of data. We have seen the theories of ethics: utilitarian theory, deontological theory, virtue ethics, ethical relativism, ethical universalism, and stakeholder theory. Utilitarian theory focuses mainly on the consequences. It believes an act is right when it provides maximum good to the maximum number of people, whereas deontological theory is focused more into the adherence of the rules and guidelines, irrespective of the consequences. Virtue ethics focus more into the characteristics of the decision maker. Ethical relativism says that actions or morality or ethics is based on the context. Ethical universalism says an act or action is ethically right when it adheres to the moral standards of morality or ethics. Then, sorry, of the universal moral standards. Then ethical stakeholder theory says that an act or an policy is right only when it addresses the interest of all stakeholders. And we have seen the concept of ethical reasoning. Ethical reasoning is applying ethical theories or principles or code of moral codes and standards into the decision-making process. And the key elements of ethical reasoning: identification of ethical issues, gathering relevant facts, consideration of alternatives, application of the theories into these alternatives, evaluation of their consequences, making a decision, and revisit the decisions. The steps similar to the principles. Then we have seen ethical relativism. Ethical relativism means an action is ethically right when it is being an act is ethically right based on the context. It is not universally right, but however, if an action is right in that particular context, then it is ethically right. So it has got cultural relativism as well as individual relativism. Then we have seen the arguments in favor as well as against ethical relativism. So I think the time for the session has come to an end. The next session, we will see into organizational ethics and corporate social responsibility in detail, then corporate governance, then a few of the terminologies of corporate of ethics. So for now, let's call it a wrap. We'll see the other topics in the next session. Hello.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Hello, Tintu.
Yes,
Yeah, the time has come to an end for the session. So I think shall I just leave or you'll be able to close this one?
yes. You can leave.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Hello, Deepa.